Hey everyone. So, the episode you're about to hear is a two-part episode that I am doing about Sidney's motherhood. This is the hottest topic about Scream 7. When I ask people what they are excited to see in Scream 7, they say it's Sidney as a mom. And so, I decided to have a big Sidney event episode. It's going to be two parts, part one, part two. Today is part one. Friday is going to be part two. And this is coming on the heels. We got a new TV spot, which confirms this kind of predicted schedule that we're going to have a TV spot, then a poster, which the poster may be coming out, releasing as you're listening to this episode as we speak. So if you do enjoy the poster, I'm excited to see it from the future, right? But the poster's coming out, then possibly a trailer the next day. And then, yeah. So if that is the case, there will be an instant reaction to the trailer on Friday's episode ahead of part two of Predicting Sidney's Motherhood. So I hope everybody enjoys this episode, this discussion, the discussion on Friday, and whatever coverage. The TV spot was really great. I especially loved the images we get to see of Sidney and Gail at the mental hospital, on the exterior of the mental hospital, some new shots of Tatum, some new shots of Sidney. It all looks really great. And the best part is we saw an updated logo for Scream 7. It's not the one that we've seen on social media and in the first trailer. It's kind of in the image reminiscent of the Scream 1 logo before Casey Becker picks up the phone. It was also nice to see Scream 1, Scream 2, Scream 3 represented in this trailer in the lead up to 7, kind of describing its legacy. So I like it. I like it a lot. All good stuff. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of this episode, this two-part Sidney event week. And also, if you haven't listened to the Sam as Ghostface episode from Monday, go back and listen. It's really worth your time. Please enjoy the rest of the show.
Scary movies.
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Curly, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. In the lead up to Scream 7, I couldn't be more grateful for everybody out there who listens to the show, who supports my podcast here, listening every episode, or on social media on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. If you would like to become a member of the podcast, come to the group Zooms, be on the show on a one-on-one or small group setting, consider joining the Patreon with Scream with Ryan C. Showers. In addition to the benefits of coming on the podcast, you can also join our social media groups, in particular on Instagram. That's the main hub of the podcast. I also do a monthly audio commentary of a Scream movie or a Scream-related film. From now through April, we are going to be having a new Scream movie audio commentary. So if you would like to hear my thoughts in an audio commentary form in the style of Wes Craven, Marion Madalena, et al. Of the original trilogy, please consider subscribing and supporting the show. Thank you to every single person out there who subscribes on Patreon. Specifically, I need to thank my Daddy Ghost Faces and Stab investors over at Patreon. Starting out strong, we have Carrie Tenney, our Mama Ghostface, Corey Wilson, and Brett Janovich. And then we have Kevin Abner, Ali, Roy Garza, Josh Carr, Mark Rim, PWO5, Gustavo Mora, Mark Vieira, Scream Queens Podcast, both Josh and Justine, Joey Nobarini, aka The Vault, Stevie Shears, Christian Rank, The Horror Project Podcast, David D., Jess Mariano, Sam Levy, Tamika Jones, Josh Calamari, and Andrew Dominguez. I need to thank some new Patreons to the group. I need to thank Sarah Weller, Jeremy Stacy, Trenton Hawkins, Lloyd Neal, Joanna Espino, Katie Taylor, and Josiah Farrell. Also, a special extra shout out to Christian Rank and Dustin Putman. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Today, we are talking about Sidney Prescott in Scream 7. And for me, this is a really special episode because, on this podcast, I have been talking about Sidney Prescott, Neve Campbell, returning to the franchise as the main character and her potential role as a mother now for literally 2 goddamn years. It has been forever since we started, musing about the idea. Well, let me rephrase. Since we wanted Sidney to come back so ferociously, from not being in Scream 6, and for me, her not being in Scream 6, as I reflected on it, I was like, oh, wow, I really want her to be in Scream 7. I missed her, and I felt like she was, a missing component of the radio silence era. And then Scream 7 went through some changes, and then it was like, oh, if, for Scream 7 to go forward, I think it's best if Sidney comes back. From there, Nev said she wanted to come back. Then she was announced alongside Kevin Williamson for his first time directing after writing 3 of the 6 films. And then there was a long period of trying to, negotiate, I guess, or get the film up and running. Then they filmed it, and then there was a long lull in 2025 without any promotion. And then we got a trailer in October. And now we just await the movie. And it has been a long road to get here. There's a part of me that felt like, I've been fighting this war for Sidney and Nev and her place in this franchise. And yet now here we are. And it's almost like Scream 7 isn't real. It's like, maybe there were times I felt like the movie never would happen, or I would never get to the ending point, but we are approaching the ending point. So here we are. I'm treating this episode as the final big Sidney episode before Scream 7, as one big final statement before we really enter into the next phase, which is seeing Scream 7. So yeah. But anyways, to join me for this epic topic about Sidney Prescott, I have a friend. Her name is Brittany, and she proposed this topic to me months ago. And I was trying to figure out the right moment, the right time, the right vibe, and everything kind of clicked into place after the Scream 7 trailer. So everyone, without further ado, please welcome Brittany. Hey, Brittany.
Hey, Ryan.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. So you were recently on the holiday group Zoom, which was on a Wednesday. You were a doll on that episode. I really had a fun time just seeing you and interacting with you long.
It was enjoyable. It's fun to see everybody and see people who are passionate about Scream like
Yeah.
I am. I wish we had this fan base when I was a little bit younger, but it's great seeing the community, and everybody's so different, but we all connect over our love of Scream.
Brittany wanted to talk about Sidney being a mother in Scream 7 before the movie comes out.
I think motherhood it's always been a theme in Scream, even though in the original movies it's been a background topic, but it's there. It's the reason why Sidney was traumatized, dealing with her trauma as a teenage girl, having a difficult boyfriend. And I think she instinctively knew something was wrong with him, even before the Ghostface calls and the killing started. But her mother being murdered and just dealing with that. And then everybody seems to have a lack of parental supervision throughout the movies. So I could go on and on about it, but I think it's going to be a really important element in the upcoming movie.
I think it's going to
we're about
be.
see.
I think it's going to be the essential element. I think this is
Yes.
going to be the reason for the season, the reason for Scream 7. Actually, it's so funny. Before we hopped on for this recording, I was just kind of organizing some podcasts, admin stuff, and I was trying to figure out some data on something. So I was looking back at old episodes. I went back basically to episode 1 on my Instagram post, and just kind of it was interesting to kind of relive the past 5-6 years in one fell swoop. And there was a post I came across that was in this time after Melissa had exited the franchise, but before Nev had officially signed back on. I made a post about Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, and I have it was we're Ripley holding Newt, and on one on top, and then on the bottom was Sidney in Scream 5 when she's on the jog with the girls, and she calls Dewey, or Dewey calls her. And I made a big speech, I speechified, how I was oh my gosh, this could be a Sidney Prescott story. This is almost an urgent, necessary part of Sidney's story. It would be a shame if we didn't get to see Sidney as a mom. And back then, we were going off of what Radio Silence had told us, which was that she had 2 young girls at least, and that she was married to Mark. And they literally told me to my face that it was Mark Kincaid. It didn't work out that way. So we had all these assumptions. Point of the post is there's this arc in the Aliens movie where Ripley learns that her daughter died while she was in outer space, and then there's this little girl that she meets along the way of the second storyline, and she kind of fulfills this arc of kind of protecting her. And I just felt whenever I had rewatched Aliens back in 2024, I was oh my gosh, this could be a Sidney Sidney Prescott story. Any thoughts, Brittany?
Yeah, I think we're gonna see this new side of Sydney, her being a mom, being a wife, living a normal suburban life, and then the threat comes, and it's not just her this time, it's her family, it's her children. And we're gonna see the visceral reaction of her protecting her daughter. I'm not sure what they're going to do with other children. I'm assuming that from what I've seen that they're gonna be sending the younger girls off, but it seems like they're gonna focus on her relationship with Tatum.
Yeah.
She's gonna protect her and try to have that bond. And
We're assuming that Sydney has one older daughter in Tatum and then two younger ones in the stroller scene from Scream 5. What do you think about that choice? Do you think it was a good choice to make Sydney have a teenage daughter and like keep the two younger girls away? Like they exist. They're out in the world somewhere. They could be in a Scream movie down the road, but right now that's not the focus. Do you think it was better to focus on like a teenage redux with Tatum, or do you think that like it's weird to not have like the little kids after we were expecting them?
oh, I can argue both ways. And I know Kevin probably is like, okay, I got to pick up the mess that was left behind with silence. And I think they are trying to do their best and do what makes the most sense. If Tatum is 16 or 17 in that age range, she was a young child when 2011 Scream 4 was around. Of course, nothing about her personal life was mentioned in that movie, and we can't go back in time and reference that, but we can say that I was safe to say that Tatum was around.
Right.
Young child, toddler. I think I'm okay with the little ones being tucked away,
Mhm.
gone somewhere safe. I think they're working with the mess that they're inheriting at this time, for lack of better terms.
Yeah.
I don't hate the radio silence movies, but there is a mess they have to clean up to continue on with Sydney's story.
Yeah. So can I ask, when do you think the mess started? Like, do you think it was Scream 6? Do you think it was Scream 5? Where do you think?
I feel like I liked Scream 5.
Yeah.
I remember walking out of the theater. I enjoyed it. It was different. It was not Wes Craven's Scream. It was not Sydney's Scream. I like to refer to it as two different worlds,
Yeah.
Sydney's Scream and Sam's Scream.
Ooh, I like that.
That's how I kind of refer to them when I talk about it with my husband, friends, so they kind of know what I'm discussing. But I feel like with 6, there was just a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Do I enjoy the movie? Yeah, I'll watch it, but am I going to reach for it organically? No.
Yeah.
I just feel like they slapped things together and wanted to see what would stick on the wall. And they're trying to appeal to younger fans, which I understand that you're trying to bring younger generations into this. But you also have a host of older fans that are kind of confused on why are you shitting all over Sidney Prescott and her storyline and acting like she doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. We don't know what Scream 7 is going to be like. We don't know what the box office will be like or what the reviews will be like. In my opinion, I don't really care about the critics' reviews as it pertains to going forward. I think that there are going to be some critics out there who are going to be mean to Scream 7 just like in a self-righteous kind of a way. But, I think that like Scream 7 is going to be a big financial success. And what you just said about like bringing in new fans and younger fans, like I think you can do it both ways. Like, McKenna Grace is a huge star and a huge draw with like younger fans. And like even Isabel May has like a little following with her Yellowstone fan base. And there are other kind of like younger stars here. I don't know. I think that like I think you can do it both ways. I think you can have Sidney Prescott there as the main character and still appeal to new fans. And I think that Scream 7 will show that. But yeah, so I like what you said about Scream 5. I kind of feel the same way, but I don't know. It's an interesting question to think about. Where do the problems begin? I mean, obviously, I think Scream 6 is almost like a problem in and of itself in so many ways. Why don't you hit everybody with a recap of your Scream story, what Scream means to you, and your Scream ranking?
Okay. I was 13 when the original Scream came out, so that ages me. When the original Scream came out, I do remember seeing all the previews on TV. At the time, I think a lot of people thought it was more of a thriller than a horror movie. Keep in mind, we didn't have easy access to internet like we do now. But I do remember a lot of the previews showing Drew Barrymore scene, the scene with Sidney calling 911 on the computer and everybody being like, oh my gosh, that's so advanced, which sounds ridiculous now. But I was on winter break from school and opening weekend, Beavis and Butthead, I believe, was coming out the same weekend, and I really wanted to see it because everybody in school was going to see it. My parents said no. So they said you had to pick another movie. So I chose Scream. My dad is a big horror guy, and he was showing me Halloween and Jason when I was a child. So he's like, this one, I would rather you watch than Beavis and Butthead. So me, my 10-year-old brother, and a friend, we watched it and I fell in love. I know that sounds morbid, but I'm very inquisitive. I love investigating things and figuring things out and trying to figure people out, and that's what drew me in, is because this was a whodunit in addition to a horror movie, and the killer was clumsy and human, and it just all the right ingredients. It's what the horror genre at that time needed. And I fell in love. It really spoke to me, and I remember leaving the theater energized. We loved the movie. People were cheering at the end. It was so fun, and the shock everyone had when we realized there were 2 killers instead of 1, and I
Yeah.
remember being 13, you're not an adult, but I remember going back and forth thinking it was Billy, and then I thought it was Dewey, and then we found out it was Billy, but then also Stu. It was just a lot of fun, and I've been grateful to seeing every single movie in the theater so far.
Wow, that is so cool. Oh my God. I love that. I'm kind of jealous.
I wish you could have been there, Ryan. You would have loved it. You would have loved every second of it. And a year later, I got to see Scream 2, and then a few years later, Scream 3. And it's just been great. It's really crazy to think when I saw 3, I was 16. Then when 4 came out, I was 27. And I've just grown up with the genre. And I love seeing the younger generations fall in love with it like I have.
So what's it like? What is it like to have been there basically from the beginning and have gone through the different iterations, like experience each of those movies in theaters in real time, the reaction from critics, from audiences, the ups and downs, and the way that the franchise evolved, and now it continues to evolve and almost come back to what made those original films by Wes Craven so great. How would you describe that experience as someone who has been there?
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
But it's been a roller coaster. There's been so many highs, but there's also been a lot of lows, and I feel like a lot of the lows were when Scream 4 came out. Everybody was really negative about it. I loved it. Scream 4 has my favorite Ghostface, Jill Roberts. I just love her. She's evil, but I love her. I remember people just really knocking it down and talking about the box office views being low. But at that time, it seemed like a lot of the torture porn movies were popular, and people just were kind of like, oh, Scream's a dead franchise. Why is this being even revived? And then fast forward to 2022, we have Scream 5, and I felt like it was getting positive again. But then just as you reach the high on the roller coaster, it just went straight down with a lot of fans fighting. And I don't think I ever really saw that a lot before.
Well, can I ask, why do you think that is?
I think the younger generation just does not like the Sidney story anymore going on. I think they want a new final girl. I understand that. I understand why they love Sam. I like Sam too. Sam has her own version of Scream, and we have Sidney's own version of Scream. But they're just a different generation. They're on the computer and they just are really inappropriate and not nice to people. So
No, because that's what I would have said too. That's the spirit of what I would have said. Like, I guess, like, I don't want to sound like delusional because, like, I am completely delusional, but like, I don't think I'm delusional about this. I think I'm right about this. Like, I think that what you said about like the fans fighting, like, there was. I don't want to say bickering, but there were definitely people like within the fandom who before Scream 5 who liked to, put Scream 3 down or put Scream 4 down. Yeah. There were even people who liked to put Scream 2 down. So, but like still, I never felt like such animosity. It was almost like a battle of the intellect. Like, who can prove that Scream 3 is better than Scream 4, or that Scream 3 is better than Scream 2, or that 4 is better than 2, or 2 is the best of 3 and 4. It was always that. It was never like this hostile, like, accusational division that I feel like really came with Scream 5, and then really much with Scream 6. I mean, I think that Scream 6, the commentary and the discourse was disgusting. And it's just, and even before Melissa left Scream in November of 23, I mean, the toxicity was already dialed up to 11 because there were people like who didn't want Sidney to come back to Scream under any circumstance, as to not take away from Sam and Melissa, which I think is completely ridiculous. And in a way, like, you think about like everything, you think about like that kind of culture. And then you add in the fact that Radio Silence wasn't really committed, that Jenna Ortega really wasn't committed, that Melissa Barrera, in the studio did not see eye to eye or get along. It's just like, and then you had Chris Landon in the middle of all this. Like, it's a no wonder that that Scream, that version of the timeline kind of like fizzled out in a way, and that of course it has to come back to Sidney, because that's I think that's what the younger fans don't understand, is like what makes Scream so great isn't the fact that like each movie is like a different. They may think that it's a different like take on meta or something. That's not what Scream is, at least not how I see it. It's always been, for me, the thing that makes Scream important and significant is the continuity and the respect of the continuity of Sidney and Gail and Dewey, as directed by one person, Wes Craven, and mostly written by one person, and Kevin Williamson.
The community is amazing. And there are younger fans that respect the original movies, they respect the fandom, and then there's a whole bunch of others that they're disgusting with their comments, the ageism. They act like Sydney should be dead. This isn't a good movie. This isn't Scream. You don't know what Scream was. You weren't even existing in 1996. Okay, so please, just like Madeline Klein's comments about, I know what you did last summer, walk so Scream can run. Do you even know what movie you starred in? Do you know the time period? Like, what are you doing? You sound so stupid. I'm sorry. I can go off on that, but
No, Madeline Klein, I had such a beef with her this summer, but both with her character, but also with that comment. Like the whole I know she did last summer, it feels so weird now. It feels like an eerie thing that like happened in a dream or something. There were just so many instances like that where it's just like, was that real?
It's like, what are you talking about? You weren't even born when that was released. So please just take several seats back and calm down, eat a Snickers, do your research before you start talking. But it's always, I think there's always going to be that divide in the fandom, and that's fine. People have their opinions. I enjoy 5 and 6. I do enjoy Sam's story, but I'm ready to exit that. I feel like it was another island where we went while Sydney's life is getting together and we get to visit again. And Gail, I'm hoping we get to see Gail, who Gail really is, because I don't know what we just watched in 2023.
Sometimes I forget that Gail is in Scream 6. I mean, I love her scene. I think that her scene is fantastic. But then, like, it's just everything else around that scene. I feel like, again, it feels like a bad dream. And in some ways, it's like there's like a mental block. Like, I genuinely forget that she's a part of the movie. And because that's how the movie treated her. The movie treated her as though she couldn't be a part of the movie except for this one sequence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was just like, oh, well, I'm going to throw you a bone to the people that want to see the original 3, the trio, even though Dewey's not there, but you would expect him to be brought up in some capacity because he was killed off in 5, and it was almost like, okay, he's gone. Where's the respect? That's where I got lost with Radio Silence. I think they treated Dewey in a way that I just felt it was very disrespectful.
Yeah. Well, and Sidney, like, I like Sidney in 5, but I just feel like there was such a lack of, there was such a loss of potential of things you could have done with Sidney in Scream 5. Like, the fact, and I say this probably like every other episode, I don't care. Like, I will say it until the cows come home. Why Sidney didn't get a phone call after Dewey died, and that's what brought her back to town. Like, that pains me to this day. Like, that's when I realized, okay, something's not right. And I remember, like, after Scream 5 came out, I was really disappointed with Sidney. I loved Gail. I liked Sam. And I was just like, but I was disappointed that Sidney wasn't used better, that she didn't get a moment to really shine. And, I feel like that was like my instinct telling me something isn't right here, even though Scream 5 seems to be great on the surface. And I think that what you said is like the perfect way to say it. Like the idea of like losing Radio Silence in their era, kind of losing you as a fan because of the lack of respect for the trio. I think that's the perfect description of it.
I think they were fans. I know they're around the same age that I am, so they grew up with it. And I think they liked it, but I don't think they were as well versed in it as they portrayed themselves to be.
I agree. There's actually a story I remember. I've told this before, but I don't tell it often. There was like when they were making Ready or Not, there was like a YouTube channel that like asked them their top 10 favorite movies, and Scream was not on that list. They went through a laundry list, and they were really prepared for it, but Scream wasn't on that list. So then for them to turn around and be like, oh, well, this movie is the reason why we became filmmakers. It's kind of like, really? Are you sure? But so what is your ranking of the films?
Oh boy. 1. It's always going to be 1 for me because that's when I fell in love with it. The second is tied 4 and 3. It's hard for me to pick. I would probably say 4 is slightly ahead of 3 just because my favorite Ghostface is Jill.
Yeah.
Then 2, 5, and 6.
Okay. I like it. Because like I'm a Wes Craven guy. I'm a 3-2-3 guy. I love 4. I mean, I deeply love 4. I'm a Roman Jill guy, so I mean like your ranking makes complete sense to me. And you know what I love about your ranking, Brittany? The fact that you described that Scream 4, the release of it didn't feel so great in the moment, that there was negativity, that people were shitting on Scream, and yet it still has your favorite Ghostface and it's still your second ranked here. That is so cool to me.
It's very ahead of its time because social media was, it was there, but not like it is now. I think they just knew that this was gonna become a thing because I can see influencers today doing this type of stuff to get where they want to be for views. And I know that the movie had a lot of problems. I remember even back then that there was a lot of script changes, there was a lot of drama, hearing those things, and it just was a really difficult movie overall for them to film, but I still think they did an amazing job with it. I enjoy it. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I love it.
Yeah.
And I love 3 too. 3 was my favorite for a long time, and then 4 came out. And it's kind of hard because I actually have a picture of me at my 17th birthday. My friends gave me a CD for the Scream 3
Huh?
album, and I have a picture of me holding it and just big ol' smile. I need to find it. It's probably in my parents' house, but I love 3, and I do remember the hate 3 getting, but I don't remember it as much when it came out. I remember 4.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Well, so first of all, I want to see that picture, by the way. But two, the weird thing is like from what I know about the time of Scream 3 coming out, and I was 4 years old when Scream 3 came out. And like so that being said, from what I understand about that time, like the first couple of weekends that Scream 3 came out, it was seen as a huge success. I mean, like my friend Amar Karim, he talks about this a lot. Like he said that he loved Scream 3. Joey Valisi, my other friend who writes the scripts for the podcast, he said that Scream 3 was his favorite ranked, and then the negativity didn't really start until like a couple months afterwards, where things kind of like started to settle in. People were mad that Kevin didn't get the opportunity, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Scream 4, I lived it, I was there, and there was a different vibe in the air. Like, I enjoyed it. I had a great time going with my sister. It was fun, but the vibe was different. So I think there's something to what you're saying here.
It was definitely a different energy, and I know the age with me being a teenager when 3 came out, and then I'm 27 when 4 came out, but there was a difference. I felt like there was more positivity around 3 when it came out, and people enjoyed it. I think a lot of people were like, there's a really interesting they're trying to poke fun at the underbelly of Hollywood, and even as a teenager, you could clearly see that. And still relevant to today, especially today coming out, everything that's come out. But
Well, before we go and talk into the discussion of Sidney and motherhood, can I hit you with the speed round questions?
sure,
All right, let's do it. So, Sidney, Gail, or Ty?
I'm going to have to go with Sydney.
Fair enough. Sam or Tara?
Sam,
Okay. Dewey or Chad?
Dewey.
See, this question. Like, I'm going to revitalize the speed round questions once we get Scream 7 because this question just is blatantly not fair. Dewey had 5 movies. Chad has 2 movies. That's on me. Poor Chad. Okay. Number 4. Favorite movie buff.
Kirby.
Nice. Favorite killer. You already said it, Jill. But go ahead.
Jill Roberts. And then I would say Billy. And
Okay.
then Roman.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
The Sydney people. Like, I have to say, like, Jill, Roman, Billy, Mrs. Loomis, like, those people had personal beef with Sydney. And I just find those motives and those killers and those interactions to be the most satisfying.
They had a lot of misplaced anger, but you could feel it. My heart ached for Roman in a way,
Aw.
even though he was doing horrible things. It broke my heart because all he wanted at the end of the day was a relationship with his birth mother. And then if she was receptive, I think he would have had that family dynamic that he craved.
Wow. No, I agree. Like, I think like that interaction of Maureen rejecting Roman was the impetus for all of this in a way. But I still don't blame Maureen. It's such a complex situation, and that's what makes Scream 3 and the arc with Roman so brilliant and so rich is that is the complexity.
Absolutely. And I don't blame her either. She was in a horrible situation. And as a whole, Wes Craven and Kevin were commenting on the misogyny of it all in the movies. And he obviously went a little dark with his feelings, but I felt for him.
Yeah, me too. Favorite opening and favorite finale?
I know this is basic. Favorite opening is always going to be Scream 1. But if Scream 1 was not in the running, it would probably be Scream 2.
And finale?
Finale, it's going to have to be Scream 4. I just love the theatrics and the dramatics and all of it.
And Jill.
And Jill, she's an evil queen. I love her.
Do you have a favorite scene overall?
There's so many. I'm going to say, since we were talking about Roman, it's fresh in my mind, him holding hands with Sydney at the end. That's where I feel like there's the humanity in these movies that you don't see in Jason, you don't see in Halloween. There's humanity, and you can see Sydney is just like, why did you have to do this? We could have gotten. I just have that sense that she's sad because she probably would have liked to get to know him, despite what her mother probably would have felt about it.
Yeah. Wow. No, music to my ears. I mean, that's my that's my fave. So, do you have a favorite kill or death?
Oh, probably Casey Becker,
Nice.
just because it scared the shit out of me as a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And it was very real. Drew knocked it out of the park. They all did, the whole team.
Nice. Yay or nay on Scream the TV series?
Yay. I did enjoy it. When it first came out, I was kind of like, what motive are they going with? Like, what direction? I hated the mask. I'm never going to like it, but I understand they couldn't use the ghost face mask. But my son was an infant at the time, so I would watch it when I was up with him, and I fell in love with the story. Actually, I really enjoyed it, and I'm disappointed that we didn't get a final ending. There's so many unanswered questions.
No, I've grown to really appreciate the TV series for what it brought us in that time. And there are in some ways I kind of think that like the first 2 seasons, like they do the Scream formula in some ways better than the Radio Silence era does holistically. So I mean, I don't know. I like
They
it.
did. They did. They did. And it's hard to judge too because it's a TV series versus the movie format, but I just think they did a really great job exploring a lot of things. And there was a lot of motherhood exploration in that too.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the story. I mean, Emma is not Sydney, but I feel like the supporting characters were better than the final girl
Yeah.
on the series.
Well, so the last question is kind of self-indulgent, but I'd love to know, do you have a favorite memory of the podcast or joining with the podcast or the Patreon?
I'm trying to remember how I found it. I think when I'm working, when I'm not on the phone or doing other things, I just listen to podcasts. I do a lot of true crime, but sometimes my mind needs to be out of that. So I was like, it's the day and age. There's got to be a Scream podcast. And I was searching and I found yours. And I think the first episode I listened to, you talked about Scream 4. And it was one of the first episodes, like the first season. And I've enjoyed all the episodes. I think that you do a really great job of really exploring the movies and the themes and the tropes, and you do your research. You know what you're talking about. I cannot listen to a Scream podcast where they get something wrong. I instantly turn it off.
Yeah, and that's how I feel too. Like the people who make simple mistakes, like about the lore, about the mythology. It's like, girl, get the fuck out of here. Like I have no time for you. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think I kind of know which a Scream 4 episode you may be talking about. I did a Scream 4 episode in like November of 21. That was like my first big like Scream 4 episode. So yeah.
Think it was around that time. It was probably late 2021. I think that's when I found the podcast because there was already all the momentum for Scream 5 coming. And I'm like, all right, I need to find something that will discuss this because we have, the internet and all that this time around. Not that's 2011 we didn't, but it's just different.
Well, I appreciate you being a supporter of mine and the podcast for all this time and listening all this time and being a Patreon. Like I really appreciate it, and I find a lot of warmth and comfort whenever I see Brittany pop up on my Instagram DMs or in my Patreon inbox. So thank you for everything that you've done for me.
Oh yeah, no problem. I enjoy when I pop in talking and reading everybody's thoughts. Even if I don't agree with a character, it's like, you just keep it moving and we're all here for the same thing. So
Exactly. Well, so you hit on some like very specific keywords whenever we were talking earlier about Scream 7. And I want to just kind of like start out here. You mentioned whenever we were talking about Nev and like the hope for Scream 7 is for it to be more adult, and like how you feel as though like Nev has kind of experienced some ageism. First of all, she completely has. I don't know why I'm saying it like it's a question. It's been pretty rough, but along with this is like, Sydney she's still the same Sydney. She's still the same final girl that we had in 1 to 4, and who was the leader of this storyline and like this vision of Scream. She's still the same person. It's just that she's in a different phase of her life now. So it's like, why wouldn't she still be the main character in some respects, And just because she's in this different point in her life as a mother and a wife, and she's older, and I think that like, in fact, like I think that we could even get a stronger story, a more interesting story than we got of her in even some of Wes's films. So I'm going to toss it over to you.
I agree. I think that we've seen Sydney by herself. Of course, she worries about whatever movie it is, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, and 5. She's worried about those who are with her at that time, whether it's Dewey or Gale, a boyfriend. But this time it's her children, and somebody is toying with her. They're using her children, namely Tatum, as a pawn, and they're really trying to emotionally break Sydney down. But I don't think that they realize how strong Sydney is. For her to go on to have children after all the trauma she's gone through, the loss of her mother, almost everybody in every phase of her life steps in and they start trying to kill her. And for her to go on and knowing that history does repeat itself and history in this franchise tends to come back and haunt you, she's a strong woman to go on and have children and have that innocence possibly be taken away and being threatened. And we're going to see a really strong Sydney where it's like, you know what, she's not playing at all. And she never played before, but I think we're going to see a really strong Sydney.
Well, back in like the before times, before Scream 5, like I never thought Sydney would have kids, to be honest. And I think it's kind of speaking to what you're saying is like the risk that Sidney Prescott would think about, her kids possibly being at risk of Ghostface coming back in whatever form after Scream 4. But isn't it such a Sidney Prescott thing to do to reject that and say, no, I'm not going to let the fear or any potential weirdos in the future dictate my choices, what I want as a woman.
Absolutely. She's like her book. She's out of darkness. I think she wants to have something that is her own and it's innocent, bringing the children into the world. Nobody's messed with that. And I feel like for her, it's symbolizing a rebirth of her life. She's closing the door on the trauma. And she I think Sydney will always wonder, is somebody going to come back and try to mess with me? But she just doesn't want to let, I guess, Ghostface went.
Right. And like by not having children or not starting a family or even not even getting married, like what if like there's another world of Scream where Sydney thinks I shouldn't even get so attached to a romantic partner in fear of them being killed, and I would carry that burden and that guilt. And she doesn't. I'm so proud of her that she didn't give into those fears about finding a partner, marrying him, but then also having children. And like also from Mark's perspective, I wonder how much he thought about that. I wonder how much he thought about like, if I marry this woman and I start a family with her, will me and my kids be under attack? And I love that for both of them, the answer was, who cares? We will deal with it,
Yes. And we don't know anything about this Mark. We don't even really know much about Mark Kincaid, but we don't know anything about this Mark other than he's the town sheriff. But I'm excited to see what we're gonna see. I know there's not a lot out there about the movie, but I know that there's going to be a big focus on her and Tatum's relationship. And I'm just excited to see her as a mother because I just feel like I grew up with her. I know that sounds biased, but being a mother myself, there's just that strong urge that somebody messes with your child. There's this whole other side of you where you're like, you know what, let's go. Let's throw hands.
Well, isn't it cool for you? Because like, to have gone through what you described in your Scream story earlier and seeing all 6 of the movies in theaters and kind of growing up alongside Neve Campbell and the cast in a way and experiencing life and then becoming a mom yourself and seeing Sydney also become a mom and that being the central storyline of the next film. What are your thoughts on that just as your experience as a woman out there in the world?
I'm excited. I'm excited to see her again, and I'm excited to have her a focus, but I'm excited to see her. I keep saying that word. thrilled for her to take on the task of being a mother and it just in general in today's society and climate. And then people do probably in the town where she lives, they probably know who she is. Maybe not, they're not going to say as much because she's in the Midwest and all of that, but people know who she is. She knows, they know who what her past is, and probably her daughter's friends too, to a degree. They may have heard things from their parents.
Well, so I have to ask, okay, let's just say Brittany is in the shoes of Sydney and you have a family, you're raising your kids. What do you do in terms of your past, in terms of your mother, in terms of all the attacks you survived, your brother and your sister, in terms of, this other, killing that's happening currently, in California or New York with Sam, and you have Gail Weathers still out there in the world, and she's obviously friends with Sydney and close to her in some respects. How much do you tell her? Do you tell her everything? Do you tell her a little bit? Do you prepare her so explicitly? Or do you not want to do that because you don't want to scare her? What would Brittany, what advice would Brittany tell Sydney to do if we could go back in time?
I would be honest with my children
Mhm.
it's one thing if your child is 5 or 6, you would explain things, not everything at that age, in an age appropriate way that some bad things happened to me in my past and leave it at that because the likelihood somebody may say something to them or they hear something, it's high. I know that sounds crazy for that age range, but kids do hear a lot at school. But for if my child was Tatum's age, we would be having a long discussion on everything.
Mhm.
You have to because you hide things. That's when
That's what
I
Maureen
feel
Prescott happens.
yes, and for Maureen and Maureen's defense, I don't she probably never sat there and thought, somebody's gonna come and murder me and then start harassing my daughter a year later. She probably never thought that the child she gave up was gonna come back and find her, but when he came back and tried to forge a relationship with her, she probably should have sat down and talked to Sydney, but I'm not gonna try to judge her for that decision because she did not sit there and think that she was going to end up murdered and her daughter was going to be dealing with different ghost faces throughout her life.
So, and I think like what you're hitting on is like, and where my question was going is kind of like the key difference between Sydney and Maureen. I feel like Sydney, she was so cognizant of like her family's secrets and her mother. I mean, her whole storyline in Scream 3 is, and Scream 1, I would say Scream 1 and Scream 3 in different forms, right? But
Mhm.
the storylines of those films are frustration with not understanding her mother, and not feeling satisfied with what she knows about her mother, because she knows that there's more to be had. There's so many unanswered questions as a young teenager who didn't get closure to her mom, and I feel like because she felt like Maureen had all these secrets and this whole other life, and that is what was causing her pain now as she was growing into adulthood. Like I feel like Sydney would never want to put her children in that same place. I think that she would be very protective of the girls, but also want to keep them informed. But I do think that there is going to be like a spectrum. Will she tell Tatum, like, yeah, grandma was, an actress and this is what happened to her and this led to a brother, and I've had to kill people, because they've been trying to kill me. Would she go that far, or would she like piecemeal, like every year there's more that gets revealed? You know what I mean?
I feel like she will explain to Tatum as she gets, she's 16 or 17. I'm not sure how old they're going to have her be, but I'm assuming same age that Sydney was in the original movie. I think she's going to be upfront with what happened to her directly and then the ripple effect and what caused everything to what she understands. But I could see Tatum being kind of defiant, like, well, that's your story. That it doesn't necessarily have to be mine.
Yeah.
And
Or I could see, and we see this kind of in the trailer, is like Tatum kind of like chopping off more than Sydney wants to give her, in terms of like,
yes.
Sydney tells her these things, but it's like, Sydney's like saying, I'm going to be honest with you, but you still have to let me be in charge. I'm in charge. You need to chill. Let me protect you. And I think there's an element of Tatum that we're going to see where she, pushes back at that, and she wants to be she literally says this in the trailer. She says, I want to be a fighter like you. I think that's going to be a central conflict between them, is like the, Tatum pushing for more responsibility in life, but also more freedom. I am sure that Sidney Prescott, the woman who lost her virginity in a house where her father was taped up in the basement, and her best friend was murdered and she went through this horrific thing. I don't think that she is going to be so trusting of every friend or boyfriend, especially boyfriend, that Tatum would have.
No, I almost feel like Sydney's like, you know what? I'm going to do a background check on your friend's parents. I'm going to do a background check on their parents. I'm going to do a background check on the entire family tree. I think she's going to be overly protective, but I think she's also trying to learn how to give the appropriate amount of space where she's not suffocating. And that's going to be a hard struggle. It's a hard struggle in general as a parent where you're constantly questioning, am I doing this right or am I screwing them up? But more of that pressure is going to be on Sydney's shoulders just because of her past. I think Tatum's going to be like, well, somebody's threatening us. I'm gonna step in your shoes, mom. And I feel like Sydney's like, no, I'm the protector. Little push and pull. Better be interesting to see.
Well, so there are two big points I want to hit with you, and then we'll talk about the trailer, and then we'll ease out of here. But like one is Gail. So you mentioned her. And like, I definitely want Scream 7 to be more adult. In fact, I want adult killer or killers. You know, I want them to be grown up. I want them to be Sydney's age. I want a lot of the dialogue and a lot of scenes with adult characters around Sydney's age. But, you know, one thing that's important is like Gail, you know, in the role she's going to play. You know, Sydney is a mother, Gail is not. They've had completely different experiences in life, even though they've both been married. Gail's marriage didn't last, and her ex-husband is now gone. And I'm just wondering, you know, how is like Sydney's perspective going to butt up against Gail's? Because they are, you know, their relationship is one of the most complex in the history of cinema between two women, or even just two friends, two characters, in the way that it's evolved over these 7 films. But from there, you know, how is it going to be when Sydney has her priorities? Do we think that Gail's priorities are going to line up? Do you think that there's going to be tension with them? Or do you think that like because of Sydney's family, there's going to be like a miscommunication between our two queens? What are your thoughts, Brittany?
It's hard to say because I feel like with every movie, they have some sort of
Drama.
conflict.
Yeah.
There's just something they don't align with. And it could be where I don't know much about this movie. I'm trying to not have anything come across my way. I don't want to be spoiled. And I know that there is fake information out there, but I could see Gail being like, well, this has happened. Somebody's threatened, whatever it may be. Let's talk about it. I think I've heard that they do go on a talk show of some sort and try to talk about things. I don't know what they're going to discuss, but I could see Sydney being hesitant, but agrees to do it. And I can see there being drama around that because Sydney is a private person. Gail has never been a private person. That's just in her blood. And I respect her for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's who she is. She's not a bad person. She is a good hearted person. I just think she's very impulsive and then realizes, oh shit, I just pissed everybody off, but you know, I'm sorry.
The way that you could make a montage or like a TikTok or a video of like Gail Weathers in every single Scream movie, like she does something and then says, oh shit, like that is Gail Weathers.
That is her to a T, but she's a good person. She does have a heart of gold. I think with Maureen, when we're introduced to her, she knew that Cotton Weary didn't do this, but when she got to know Sydney a little bit more, when everything started happening a year later, I think she realized I got to be a human. I have to have some feelings and some empathy about these people that I'm reporting on. And you see it.
And that's actually a really nice way to summarize Gail's arc, what you just said there, because that kind of carries over into Scream 2 with Randy. I mean, that's literally Randy's, how she reacts to Randy's death. And like that's kind of like the change in Gail that we start to see that leads into Scream 3 and Scream 4, of course. So very beautifully said. So I want to ask you about one specific thing. In the trailer, we see this scene with Sidney and Tatum, and kind of like a question I asked you earlier about like Sidney almost like micromanaging. Because like I personally think that Sidney is going to micromanage the shit out of Tatum. Her heart's going to be in the right place and her brain is going to be in the right place, but it's also going to not give Tatum the agency that she probably desires as a young person in the world. And I'm sure Sidney's going to be right. I think that's going to be the conflict of the movie, right? Kind of like John Tate and Laurie Strode. And then, of course, he fucks around and finds out, and boy, does he find out that his mother was right. Because Kevin wrote Halloween H2O, I guarantee it's going to be a very similar thing here with Sidney. More specific, more detailed, probably more depth, but it's going to be very similar. But the thing that we saw in the trailer of Tatum, like in the coffee shop where the killer is attacking her, Sidney is clearly not at the coffee shop. She is far, far away, and she's watching everything go down on her cell phone on the technology. and she's kind of like walking Tatum through what she needs to do. I feel like there's going to be such depth there because it's like, oh, Tatum finally she kind of gets what she wants. She gets to be independent, but she still needs her mom. And I think that's kind of a beautiful thing for both Sidney and Tatum because it's weird because it allows Sidney to still be the mom, but still teach her in a weird way. And Tatum has to act on her own in a way. So it's going to be such a complex thing. I can't wait to see this scene. I think, honestly, there are times I think about this moment in the trailer, this 30 seconds we see of Isabel May and Nev Campbell on the phone in the trailer, and she has the gun and she's shooting. Like, I feel like that is such brilliant character development. I think it's going to blow our socks off.
Yes, I think exactly. I couldn't say it any better than what you just said, Ryan. I think Sydney's going to be able to help guide her daughter, but not do everything for her. She needs to, in a way, let her daughter fight her own battle.
Yeah. And that's not what we see in Halloween H2O. In fact, Halloween H2O kind of says the opposite. Halloween H2O kind of like allows Laurie Strode to fight John's battle for him. And Scream 7, I think, is going in a slightly different direction where Sidney still has to come and help save Tatum. And Sidney's going to be doing her own thing. But I also think Tatum is going to get the moment to emerge, if that makes sense, and actually own what she's seeking and desiring. And it's going to be a beautiful thing between Sidney, the parent, and Tatum, the child.
Yes. And Sydney, I love her. I picture her just being that quiet girl at school, but so much intensity and so much empathy. And I think she's just going to be a great mother, even though I think people are going to question her parenting choices because she is going to be strict. She's going to be stricter than the other girls, her daughter's friends' parents. I just have that idea. But I think we're going to see a really great bond between her and her daughter, even though they probably won't be getting along very well. I think that's just normal with moms and teenage daughters, and it'll be fun. I feel like her daughter's gonna have a little bit of a spice to her, kind of like Tatum and maybe some Gail. That's Auntie Gail. There's gonna be some Auntie Gail in her.
And just imagine that, like, I think, like, Sidney having a daughter who is, like, because Sidney, in my mind, she's very angelic. She's very saintly. Joey Valisi in our Scream, in the 3 scripts that he wrote for the podcast, he talks about, like, he calls, like, Gail kind of pokes fun at Sidney, calling her Saint Sidney. But she does kind of embody goodness in a very specific way. And for her to give birth to a daughter who is very spunky and spicy and kind of like pushes back, I think it's very poetic. It makes sense. And like also just, I think it's so cool that like Tatum seems like she is completely 100% different from who Sidney was back in 96. So again, what a way to push Sidney as a character than to make her deal with someone who is nothing like her. You know what I mean? Back then.
And Tatum probably will handle things differently than how Sydney would. And I could see Tatum, and it's all kids. Even my kids are younger. My oldest is 11, but he's already very, he questions things. They want to understand you and where you're coming from on your thoughts, on your decisions, ask questions on life experiences. And I feel like Tatum's going to be constantly on that with Sydney. She wants to understand her mom and her thoughts and her motives and figure her out.
Let alone on that scale, right? Where there's murder involved in life and death,
Yes. And it's going to be great to see. And I'm hoping the same thing with the killers. I have an idea that Anna Camp is going to be one of the killers. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because we've had so many movies, but I don't even know what the motive would be, but I'm really hoping it's not a whole nother boyfriend trying to cause problems.
Yeah, I think that would be disappointing. But no, I love Anna Camp. I'm a huge fan of Pitch Perfect, and I would think she would be wonderful. So, and I just want to echo something you said earlier. Like there's a line in the trailer where we see Sidney yelling, "Give me back my daughter." And I think that's kind of where we are going to get what you talked about earlier, that primal aspect of Sidney as a mom, like that animalistic, like the Sidney we've never seen before. And that's so exciting that we've been with this character now for 30 years, 6 films with her, and 5 of which at this point now, she will have been the main number 1 character. And yet we are still peeling back layers of who this woman is. That is so exciting to me.
It is. And I can't wait to see that because as a mom myself, I could be at my wit's end at the end of the day, work, life, my kids, and somebody's threatening them, that adrenaline gets going. It's like no other energy spike. And it can take me from 0 on E straight up to 100, and I will get shit done. And Sydney's definitely going to get shit done.
Well, I love it. So
I just think we're going to be in for a surprise. I have a really good feeling around this movie. I didn't have that feeling around 6.
Yeah.
I think we're just getting a whole new story. Even though it's still Sydney, I think we're going in the direction that we should be. And I think everything that happened, it is what it is. It was meant to be.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree 100%. So, well, Brittany, I think that we should have like a follow-up discussion about how motherhood is specifically portrayed in Scream 7 after we've had time to process it and maybe around Mother's Day. Are you in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't wait to see what else other themes are in the movies, not just motherhood, but this part of it. I'm really excited to see just because I have that in common with her. So, and I look up to Sydney. I know she's a fake character, but she's strong and she's still an empathetic person with everything that's happened to her. She still tries to give trust to people.
Yeah. I look up to her too. I love these women so much, and I can't wait to see what's next for them, and specifically Sydney, and specifically how she's going to get pushed in a fresh new thing for the franchise, which is this idea of Sidney Prescott has a kid. Like, what the hell, you know?
It's going to be fun to see. I can't wait to see her be a wife and just living her everyday life and how she's been living that for a while with, of course, with what happened in Scream 5. She hopped a plane, whatever it may be. But to see her life, see her running her coffee shop and just see her normal.
Yeah. I agree. And like that's something that we never really get to see Sydney just doing is being normal. We get a little bit of it in Scream 2, but this is like gonna be the most normal we see Sydney. And it's gonna go from like most normal to least normal, like really fast, you know? So
Absolutely, and I can't wait to see the other new characters. I know everybody's frustrated with the lack of information, but I'm glad that things are somewhat close to the vest because I feel like with 5 and 6, we knew who I got spoiled
yeah.
with 6, and it wasn't me searching for it. It literally was on a thread that I pulled up on X, and I'm like, "Great, and now I know who the killers are." But they put too much out there. I wanna be surprised. I don't wanna know anything.
Yeah.
I wanna know a little bit about who the new characters are, but that's it. And I think they're doing things the way it should be done. They're doing it the old school way. And sometimes we need to go back to that.
I mean, this is literally old school. We are literally going back to old school here. We love that. But Brittany, thank you so much for joining me. And I can't wait to follow up with you again. Both tonight and being on the group Zoom the other day. You've made my week so much brighter. So thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, it was fun. Everybody was great in the group chat, and it was fun. I had a great time.
Awesome. Well, we will catch up with you around the time of Scream 7 and after Scream 7.
All right, it's gonna be here before we know it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for this spectacular Sydney episode. Wow, I saw an accent just came out of my mouth. What was that? Was that like country or was that New Jersey? I don't know.
I don't even think I noticed.
All right, well, welcome to this spectacular. There we go. There's the real Ryan voice. Welcome to this spectacular Sidney Prescott episode. This is the first big Sidney Prescott episode of 2026. We are discussing her in Scream 7, our predictions for her in Scream 7, but more so, like, in particular, like, her motherhood and her relationship with Tatum and kind of, like, what her emotional journey is going to be like in Scream 7 and just kind of, like, thinking about the possibilities here and what our outside perspective could be before we see the film. So we are going to be doing a very astute Taylor Swift song, a very special Taylor Swift song to further unlock some things about Sydney and discuss her. And joining me, I have, of course, the one and only Ashley. Hey, Ash.
Oh, hi, Ryan. Was debating on if I should do a Alberta accent just now, but I didn't. But I'm so excited to talk about this song with you.
I am too. What is the Taylor Swift song of the day to celebrate Sidney Prescott in this way?
So the Taylor Swift song of the day is Would've, Could've, Should've. It is track 19, technically, off of Midnights. It came on the deluxe 3 a.m. edition. I've got that accent now. This was written and produced by Taylor and Aaron Dessner. Quick synopsis of this, I think, would be looking back at a past relationship, realizing how toxic and honestly inappropriate that the relationship was and how hard that can be especially when you're a young person and when you get older, looking back at it and being like, holy crap. That was not okay.
Wow. And I mean, this song, it hurts. Honestly, this may be my favorite song on Midnights or second favorite it's top 3 for sure. I think it's one of the best songs she's ever written. I think it's one of the most visceral songs she's ever written. There's something about this song that once you get it, once it clicks, it is like an emotional attack on your nervous system, I think. Like I remember, and we talk about this often, is like the idea of having a moment with the song. Sometimes, when you get a new Taylor Swift album, it's like getting an encyclopedia, and you have to get through each of the things and understand things in doses. And whenever I had my dose of Would Have, Could Have, Should Have, where I was really listening and really digesting and really getting what she was saying, I kind of crashed out. I remember this night vividly. It was in October, 2 months ago. I was at my mom's house. I was, I was just, I remember just laying in bed, just listening to it over and over and over again. And it just stunned and like hurting. And like she just unlocked something like this searing pain in this song, and in so many different ways. And, and as I've kind of like sat with the song over the past couple of months, I've been like, oh, wow, this is such a Sidney song. This is Sidney Prescott. This is Sidney like in Scream 2 and 3 reflecting on her pain and kind of like being consumed by her pain. And this kind of applies to the Midnight's philosophy, which is like Midnight's is the album of songs that she is sitting at home stewing about in the middle of the night, going over things over and over and over in her head. And this, I feel like, encapsulates that thesis statement of the album so well. So Ash, what are your thoughts on Would Have, Could Have, Should Have?
Shocking. I love this song. But this song honestly means a lot to me. I don't really know how to exactly convey how much it means to me. I don't think I've ever felt so like seen by a song, specifically some lyrics in this song. And the first time I heard it, I started crying. And I booked a therapy appointment to go to therapy for a trauma that I experienced as a teenager, because I was like, girl, you're not over that at all. And like that's a positive thing, is being like I actually had like a pretty visceral reaction to this song, to the point where it was like every emotion that I felt when I was 16 or 17, however old I was, that I had like built a huge wall up, and like I buried those feelings so insanely deep. It was like they all like were coming out of me, to the point where, Ryan, I could not speak. Like I couldn't talk to Garrett. Like I had a therapy appointment booked, and my first appointment, I hardly said any words except for like a very like minute amount of like information to give her. But I was just like like whispering. And then like as it was like I got like my spark back as soon as like I went to that appointment, and just like I felt like what's her name? Reagan in
Yeah.
The Exorcist, just spewing all of the grossness that was like inside of me that somebody else put there, that I was just like, get it out. And I honestly, like, sometimes like I talk about how Taylor like really saved me in moments, and I don't think that I would be the person I am right now if I hadn't, because 1989 saved me from experiencing that, and this song made me be like, you need to deal with that. Because like thinking you dealt with something and dealing with it are very different. And this song is so well, the experiences based on what I think she's singing about and what I went through are very different. There's still that pain, and that's still that thing that is like I didn't date an older man.
I have.
But I
Many.
mean, not at that point, not at this point. Not when I was like 19. And I honestly thank her for it. Like I wish I could send her a card being like, thank you for writing this song.
The fandom commentary behind this song is this is about her relationship with John Mayer. She dated him when she was 19. He was 32. And see the song Dear John for more context. But this is like Taylor kind of reconciling with that relationship, how hurtful it was to her, how powerless she felt, the ego of John Mayer hurting her in such a vulnerable age, and like the gap being so drastic, so severe. And this is about like Taylor kind of reflecting on that and realizing, oh, wow, like this was really, really shitty. And like, I think like it was probably hard for her to process these emotions at the time, because when you're 19, you don't have the tools to do so, not in the way that she does here. So she's writing this song when she's 32, at the age at which John was. And so she's trying to gain back the power. And I think she does here by doing that. I also, just to make it a little personal on my end, I definitely get what she's saying. I've always dated older guys. And while most of like the relationships I don't regret, I don't have like such hard feelings. There is one thing that very badly happened whenever I was like 22, and it was a horrific situation that I never should have been in at that young of an age. Whenever I was listening to this song yesterday, doing like the deep dive to record today, I got upset. I was upset reliving that and the injustice that I felt, and I feel like that's what we hear from Taylor here is just how unfair all of this was to her, and how like even though like it's really hard for her to let go of this, and it's really hard for her to heal from this, and I think all of those emotions are really true to life, and they can be applied to Scream. But I'm going to pass it back to Ash before we go into the Sidney of it all.
Yeah, I think that when you're younger, when someone that's older than you looks at you, it feels really special. It feels really special to have that. But when you're 32, the thought of dating a 19-year-old is like, that is an absolutely insane thought to me. Not because I don't think 19-year-olds are fun and beautiful and lovely in every way that they are, but because we are in such different paths, and it feels like wanting to date a baby. They're like they are a really young person. And when Taylor got older and was like, wow, I'm the age that he was when he dated me.
Yeah.
She was probably just like,
Mind
probably a
blown.
little bit disgusted by that,
Yeah.
being like, that is so weird. Like, why was he interested in me? It's not like he wanted to be my mentor. It's not like he wanted what he wanted. And he has continuously behaved in a way that I don't think shows him in like the best light. It seems like he continues to date young people. And like, she also said that she doesn't want people to like hate him or like send him hate. But I'm like, I kind of
But I
want to,
do.
but I really like, I never would. One of the things that made me so mad is that he tried to like take the upper hand and like try to make himself look like he was like so victimized when she released the song Dear John. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're 30
Girl.
fucking two, bruh. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? Like, this is a 19-year-old girl. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course she's upset. Like, I would
Exactly.
be like, everyone's allowed to be upset when they feel manipulated, but especially when like when your mom is telling you, please don't do this, please don't do this, please don't do this. And if I had advice for any young person, I would say, if you have a person in your life who you trust, who you love, whether they're your best friend who's the same age as you, your mom, whoever it is, if you have somebody in your life who you feel like has always had your back and they're pointing out something not so great that somebody else is doing to you, give them the benefit of the doubt for a minute and just like really take that in. And you can make whatever decision you want for whatever's best for you in that moment. And I don't think you should feel any shame about whatever way you go. But if you have someone who has always had your back and you really think they always have the best interest for you, talking about Taylor's mom here, because she says, like, my mom thought I was insane and kept telling me not to do this. And I didn't listen to her. And, that's a really good lesson to learn, but that's a really unfair and a lesson that was not needed, in my opinion.
Well, and just to take this to the Scream level, because it's amazing how many Taylor Swift songs fit Sidney Prescott so well. But there was an episode we did about Sidney back in the spring where we applied State of Grace to her, and it was perfect. This was an Ashley suggestion. She had been writing this song as it pertains to Sidney for a long time with me. And once we went through it, it was kind of mind blowing. It kind of changed my perception of Sidney, especially in Scream 1. If State of Grace from Red is Sidney when we meet her in Scream 1, I feel like Would've, Could've, Should've is the Sidney Prescott of Scream 3, because a lot of this song is about how Taylor is wrestling with how unfair this was, and like how she didn't really knew what she was doing, and like the secret motivations of people with more information than her, and how this situation caused her to have a crisis of faith and just questioning everything, and her outlook about everything and her memories. And I feel like that is Sidney Prescott in Scream 3. I think that like Sidney would think about this way. I think about this in terms of Billy Loomis, of course. Like, he is the devil that Taylor says, I shouldn't have danced with the devil. But it goes deeper than that. I think it's also about like Sidney musing about like the pain of her family history, and not like, I feel like what Sidney is going through in Scream 3 is a crisis of faith, in terms of like not really knowing the truth about her mother, and feeling like the truth was kept from her, or is still being kept from her, and not being able to understand her family and all these secrets about her mom and about the public's perception of her. I just feel like, and then even like, this, the idea of like her memories are used against her. One of the lines in the song is that memories feel like weapons. And that like literally we see Sidney experiencing her memories of Billy in her bedroom, her attack at her home. And then of course, Maureen's crime scene when she's on the set of Stab 3. And it is like I feel like that is like harsher weapons to Sidney Prescott, her spirit, her soul, than any stab wound she experiences in any of the movies. And even so, like just like the idea of like Maureen Prescott, like, there's a line in the song where she says, the tomb won't close. And that's like the tomb of Maureen. It's just like my mother's deaths, it won't close, that my mother's secrets, like because she had all these secrets, her tomb, her death can't be, and it can't be over. There's nothing concrete about it because all these secrets are still out there in the world and she still struggles with them. I just think like, wow, it's just, it just kind of like blows my mind how much this applies to Sidney. So Ash, any thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like when you were saying that, I also thought like Maureen could really relate to this song
Oh, yeah.
in a lot of ways. And that makes me sad that mother and daughter can both really relate to it. But just like even like when the bridge where you're talking about like God rest my soul, like usually that would be like God rest your soul or the person you're talking to, but she's like asking it for herself. I miss who I used to be. That's one of those like lyrics that like it gets me all the time because I relate to it. And like the tomb won't close. Like I love how like you thought of it as like Maureen. I've always thought of it being like the tomb where like I've put the memories of this, like all of this stuff that it goes. Like I literally can't close it because I can't move past all of these things that have happened. And then stained glass windows, like how many churches and how many funerals has Sydney had to be where they have possibly stained glass? Or that's like I have heard that a certain someone had stained glass windows in his apartment. But do I know that for sure? And I fight with you in my sleep. Like that's obviously like a fun Wes Craven little line. But also it's also like just like I know I personally have like fantasies of like what I wish I could say to somebody or dreams where I talk to them or and just like tell them what I think. And it's so funny because like I think some people would think like my like people's fantasies would be to like like physically hurt someone. And I'm like, I don't want to hurt this guy. I want to embarrass him to the degree that like he could never recover. Like I wanna make him feel as small as he made me feel. Like I want to embarrass him in front of like if he had a family and a wife, I want to go to their house and be like, this is what your dad did to me. And I want to be like, yeah, your dad's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just like, I was like, oh, so angry. But at the same time, like, letting go of that anger is really good. But my therapist always said, like, being like, she's like, you're allowed to be pissed off. You're allowed to be angry. Like, you're allowed to feel all of these things. And it's good to, because she was like, if you're not sad anymore, like, you're not like, you're feeling the thing that you should have felt a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I hope that for Sydney, that like she's able to feel all of the feelings that she should. But when she says like, if clarity's in death, then why won't this die?
Yeah.
Like you literally killed him, and it's still haunting you to this day. But I also think that shows that Sydney is such a decent human that like I think even hurting him, like even having to take a life of somebody, even though it was to protect your own and others, just I think that would haunt her no matter what. Like I don't think she got any joy out of doing what she did
Yeah.
or what she had to do. I don't think she enjoyed it. Like I think she wished that she could have just been like testified against them in jail, like court, and like had them locked up in prison. You know what I mean? Like I think she would have preferred.
Well, just if I could jump in here about the clarity in death, I was thinking about it in terms of like if there's clarity in if there's supposed to be clarity and peace, in the death of anybody, why can't I stop obsessing about this? Why does this affect my daily life? Why can't I leave this isolated house in the middle of the woods? Why am I locking up my doors? Like if there's supposed to be, this is over, why am I still haunted by it? But also to what you're saying is like the clarity in death, like in some ways, yeah, someone would think, logically, oh, well, if Sydney killed Billy or she killed Roman or she killed Mickey, that what they did to her would be over. It wouldn't bother her anymore. But it won't. You're right. Killing them doesn't stop the impact of what these people did to her in her life. And even though I think that she does get a lot of clarity and closure in the end of Scream 3 when she does show compassion to Roman and holding his hand, like, I think that stuff would still sit there and linger. And that's probably why she wrote the book Out of Darkness, from Scream 3 to Scream 4. I think that's so apt and on point. And, that line that you referenced earlier, I miss who I used to be. Again, this goes back to Sydney and her girlhood, like the girlhood that you talk about in Scream 1. I feel like Sydney in Scream 3, she probably feels that I miss who I used to be before my mom died, and before all of this started. She says as much to Neil in the kitchen, right, in Scream 3. So it's just like, it really hits me deep. So Ashley, since you were on the bridge, why don't you finish us off?
If clarity's in death, then why won't this die? Years of tearing down our banners, you and I, living for the thrill of hitting you where it hurts. Give me back my girlhood, it was mine first.
That's obviously, so the line at the end, give me back my girlhood, it was mine first. It's the most famous line from this song. I think one of the most famous lines from Midnight. It's what kind of made me crash out and then like really start to digest the rest of the song. It's like, oh wow, I feel that. But also Sydney feels that, and Taylor feels that, and Ashley feels that. Like whenever somebody does something to you that does take away your innocence or your spark or your optimism, it's hard to ever get that back and be pure again. Like when something is tainted, it's hard to untaint it. You can just learn to live with it and learn to cope with it, but like you can't actually ever get it back. It's such a tragic, beautiful, relatable, devastating line.
Yeah, I love that line, but I also like hate it in a way because it's so sad. And girlhood can be looked at a couple different ways. Like what I think of girlhood is what I want girlhood to be is um like growing up and like that innocence of being young. But girlhood can also be a word for virginity. It can also be, which is something that's really put upon young women at a very young age to quote unquote stay pure and stay innocent and save this amazing thing for somebody special in the future. And I personally don't agree with how the thought of virginity is like put upon people because it definitely is something that's put upon women in a really weird way that it's not put on young men. If anything, it's the complete opposite. It's like, dude, if you haven't had sex, like you're a loser. But where are all the people you're supposed to like if you only want people to have sex with men to have sex with women, what girls are they supposed to have sex with if they're not allowed to have sex? Like it's very confusing for everybody. But saying like you took my girlhood to somebody, like give me back my girlhood, it was mine first. When you have somebody that you feel like literally took that from you in a weird way, where like you can't get back to that person that you were before a specific incident or before a relationship or whatever it is to somebody, it feels really nice when you hear somebody else say like that they want it back. And I would also like to say, I don't think anybody can take that away from you. It can feel like they can, but it is yours. So it will feel like someone can take it away, but like I believe that you can get it back. And I believe that it is not anybody's to take. It is yours internally. And it might feel like they have it at different times, but it's yours. Like that part of you, no matter how you interpret this song, it's yours. So
well, and you bring up the concept of virginity and the stained glass windows and yada yada. But like, so there's a religious component to it. But Sydney did literally lose her virginity to Billy Loomis and the devil that she danced with. That kind of, again, I can't imagine the conversations that Sydney has had about herself. I would love to, I would love to hear not Taylor's version, Sydney's version of Midnight's 3 a.m. edition, just because like, I feel like the conversations and the musings and the stewing at the middle of the night that she's had about all of the killers, everything that's happened to her mom, Gail, the loss of her friends, but like the idea of Billy here, we can't ignore that very strong metaphor of girlhood, literally as virginity, but also just as a concept, I think, of like when your mom is killed in front of you or like killed in the next bedroom over, there is an element of like the girlhood, right? A loss of allowing yourself to be naive. Sydney would be changed forever after the death of her mother. And like there have definitely been events in my life that have changed me where I can apply it to that line that aren't about virginity, that are just about like, huge impactful things where there was a before time and there was an after time. I can relate it to professionally, the podcast even, but also just very personal. So it's such a beautiful line. And this is why this is why we love Taylor Swift. This is why you have people like me and Ashley who are so dedicated to her and would do anything for her, because she gets us, I mean, look at this conversation that we're having about ourselves, but also Sidney, you know what I mean? Like there's something so deeply human about this, and so complex.
Yeah, and I think throughout Scream, we see how Sydney is blamed for the actions of shitty men throughout a lot of it. I mean, there's some women throughout there too. Don't, but it's like, I mean, it starts from two losers that are super manipulative and
Mickey's also kind of a bro, and Roman, you could have like, I could see someone saying about him, he's a promising young man, like he's a promising young filmmaker, Roman Bridger. Like, so it's definitely a gendered thing in the original trilogy.
Yeah, and it's something where like she is like put all the shame is put on her and all of this thing, and it's like instead of using the word girlhood, just like childhood was ripped apart based on what happened. And I know some people will be like, oh, she's a teenager. I don't care. You're still growing up. You're still learning who you are. Like, sure, maybe like I was like in the United States, but you have to be 21 to drink. Okay, well, she wasn't even 21 yet. She couldn't even have a beer. It's like, let's give the girl some credit.
How about it?
And I think like even if Billy wasn't the bad guy and she lost her virginity and then he was murdered, also
Devastating.
really shitty outcome of a night. Like really,
Yeah.
like it would be really crappy. Like no matter how it played out. But and also like I don't know like what like also like seeing like the person that you probably would have been like excited to share that with, like your best girlfriend, like Tatum.
Dead too. Yeah.
Like talk about having like, because girlhood can also be like the relationship between young women. And like what a way to like have like your girlhood feeling ripped away from you is to, and in a really gross way too, like to see that happen to your friend. You're just like, oh, okay, well, great.
And, it's interesting going with my Scream 3 philosophy here too. Sydney, that's the first thing Sydney sees when she enters the Stab 3 set. She sees the garage where Tatum was killed before she goes upstairs to the Billy of it all, to the attack, to the Maureen bedroom. So you're right. I love that you looped in Tatum here. I think that like, it's so interesting how, I don't know, the reflection of this, the reflection that Taylor has in this song is almost literally a verbatim copy and paste of what we see here in Scream 3 with Sydney in the Stab 3 set. So there's a couple of lines I just want to pick out just because they're very Scream-ish. And I damn sure never would have danced with the devil at 19. And the God's honest truth is that the pain was heaven. And now that I'm grown, I'm scared of ghosts. Memories feel like weapons. Blah, blah, blah. You mentioned this earlier, but I just want to I want to reiterate, like she says, God rest my soul. I miss who I used to be. The tomb won't close. Stained glass windows in my mind. I regret you all the time. I can't let this go. I fight with you in my sleep. The wound won't close. Like, we hear it literally. Ghosts, weapons, wound. I fight with you in my sleep. Sydney's literally fighting with her mom and the memory of her mom and Ghostface in her sleep. But I just think that like there's so much in here that's coded in Scream, but also Sydney.
Yeah, I think this song is just about trauma. So if anybody's experienced it, it's our girl Sid. She's had, I mean, like I get people who are like, don't make her live through another Scream movie. And I'm like, no, I want it.
Because but she overcomes it. That's the beautiful thing.
Yeah. And the thing about Sydney is that like, I love how Scream is about her and Scream is about Gail and Scream is about Dewey and the survivors and whoever's behind the mask. It doesn't really matter because they're, knock on wood, gonna win.
Well, the beautiful thing about Sydney, everything that we've talked about here is like, I could also see this being a Sydney and Scream 7 song because now, as Taylor kind of went from 19 to 32, from experiencing this to writing this song, Sydney is kind of reflecting now that like Tatum is her age, that she experienced this, and she's older in the age of Maureen. So it's just also just like this weird, not this weird, but like this, it's also just this like kind of like role reversal where Sydney is like afraid of all of this stuff that could happen to Tatum now. She doesn't want Tatum to experience what she experienced. It's almost like what Taylor's doing with this song. Taylor's like writing this song and almost like as like a warning to people, maybe I would say. I feel like Sydney is what we could see of her in Scream 7 is a frustrated Sidney trying to prevent Tatum from experiencing the type of pain that she experienced back then on multiple levels.
I completely agree. And the thought of Sydney having to have multiple conversations about the right boyfriend or right significant other, the surrounding yourself with good friends, not being manipulated, sex, like how to get away from a murderer. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's all of these, like how to fight. I don't know if like it's definitely something that's like thrust upon young women at a young age is like how to walk down the street in a safe way. Like don't walk on this side of the street, like walk where there's lights. If you see this, you should cross the street. Like don't leave your drink by itself. There's a lot of these like coded messages that are like kind of like thrust into our brains. But like I can't imagine having to be Sydney and be like, okay, because you're mine, because I made you, you have this extra element of scary, which I imagine like Taylor Swift would have to feel like if she ever had a kid, that there would be an
Yeah.
extra element of scary for her having to deal with weirdos and wackos weirdos and wackos. That was the weirdest way of describing that. But that's what they are, just like these weird people who love to hurt others. And I I think that this song is so relatable, and I think Sydney's journey is so relatable. When I was actually in my second or third appointment with my therapist, I talked about why I started talking about Sydney. Like I literally, and she was like, "Well, it
Aw.
makes sense why you love her so much." And like I haven't told
Aw.
anybody this. She goes, "It makes sense why you love her so much because you're just like her." And I was like,
Aw.
"I'm not like her." And she goes, "You survived. You did what you had to do to get out of that experience, and you did everything that was right for yourself." And she was like, "I think she'd be proud of you."
Oh my God.
And I could like I can't even talk about it because like it made me want to cry. But like this like my therapist was like even a few years younger than me, but like a woman that felt like my peer telling me that in a way that was like, well, I get why you like her so much. And she was too, my therapist was like, I've never seen a scary movie because she's too scared to watch them. But she was like, I get why you like her so much. Like it makes sense that like you turn to her in these moments because you're just like her. And I was like, I mean, I don't know how to take that as a compliment because I don't feel that, but it meant so much to me having someone say like, no, you fought just like she did. Like you got through your version of Scream in the same way. And I think I've only told like one other person that because it's just like it feels kind of embarrassing at the same time. Like, oh, it feels kind of cringe to say that. But I think we're all Sydneys in our own story, right? Or whatever character like you feel like connects to with you. And like if we can all relate to like this song, then I think it can just like make us understand why we can have a little bit more empathy and compassion for everybody.
Well, one, I agree with your therapist. Two, I promise I won't tell anybody.
Hi, everybody listening.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that's a beautiful place to end the discussion of Would Have, Could Have, Should Have. An amazing song, one of the best songs of all time, and a really nice discussion of Sydney and like her trauma in Scream 3 and like what she's wrestling with and those ideas. Ash, thank you so much for being willing to discuss all these things. This is a heavy song.
Oh, yes.
Thanks, everybody.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
Get another beer, you want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back!